comfy chair.
That would be awful. So much sadness on a Wednesday. Let's see, getting into finishing out our Fable-y stuff. And then there. Let's see, notebook. And yay, and the finishing of the notes. So fascinating. Let's see, crossed out the old table of contents, set up the new table of contents. We have the one Fable thing in there. Go ahead and take the Fable notes and flop them face down. We'll see how much has stayed in your brain.
We still need to do some work.
Yeah, I know. We're not done yet. We're gonna come back to it. Let's see. We got into yesterday the idea that fables have been around for a long time because it started off when the kids were stupid, and hopefully now they're slightly less stupid. And so it was our very early version of school child.
I know the first one.
Wow, and so fables, have they been around so long? All right, Haley, the very first fable, since you turned your notebook face down, just like I asked, let me have it to tell you already. Traditional, which is the oldest form that's been around for the longest period of time, which is the ones that have animals doing old kinds of animal things. And then we figured out a way to rewrite them to make them more special. And the second way of doing fables, Ethan, is?
Verse.
The verse fable, not verses where we have things fight each other, because punching people is fun, but a little bit different from there. And how's a verse fable written, Lindsay?
Modern.
Wait, what?
Who? How's a verse fable written?
Oh, what's like a poem?
Yeah, liar. I don't know exactly. It was written not just like a poem, but as a poem with all kinds of rhymey words. And yesterday I impressed you with my mad rapping skills. Or whatever skills I might have had. And then we have the most recent one, Albert, which is?
Modern.
And that's where we bring in the modern fables. And I introduce you to a very technical word with our modern fables, because how are the modern fables going to be written, Maggie?
Today.
What kind of word is it?
Today.
There you go, today, very technical word. And so that's where they get to use the cars and the iPhones and stuff like that. We have our today type stuff. And it turns out, in order for a story to exist as a fable, there's one important thing that it has to have. And Isaac, what's the important thing it has to have?
I don't know.
A nap? Close. It does start with an M, you're correct. It does, nicely done. Good teamwork, way to tag in on that one. It has to have a moral. And then Kendra, what is a moral? It's like a nap, but different. I know. It's the thing that keeps the kids from going around and hitting each other in the head with rocks.
Oh, the
helmet?
lesson
No.
it teaches?
It is correct. It's the lesson that we're going to learn, whatever it might be, whether it's don't hit your friends in the head with a rock, or slow and steady wins the race. Sleeping in class is dangerous depending on the teacher. All sorts depends on what it might be. If it could help, you could stand. If that would help you wake up a bit, no, I don't mind. It's the least I could do for you.
I like to
No,
Can I
just
stand?
checking. Yeah, you're welcome to stand. Let's see. Then we got into, how we can tell if a story is a fable and not just a random collection of words, because I have kids like, is Humpty Dumpty a fable? No.
Yes.
But an egg isn't a hen. It's not. And so there's going to be certain things we're going to get into to make a fable a fable. The most important one, Padilla, is that's where it has to have a moral. And so as it goes down the list, it'll be slightly less important, but it has to have a fable. If you're telling a story and there's no fable, no moral, then it most definitely will not be a fable. And here you can flip the things back over, because we're going to start introducing new information.
Yes.
Whip it.
Actually, I think eggs are animals because there's sometimes like chicken and
Sometimes there are. And sometimes just delicious food. This is an argument I can definitely understand.
just kidding.
So one, they have to have a date and title at the top, so you would not get smacked with a stick, because that would just be awful. Then they also have to have the moral. Then if we're trying to educate kids and help them learn not to hit each other in the head with rocks, we want to have characters that they're going to pay attention to. And if it's old people telling the stories, we don't want to have old people as characters, because kids don't care about old people. What kind of characters should we use to get kids to pay attention? Cammy. Animals, because they're small, fluffy, and delicious. And so most fables will have animals as the main character. Every once in a while, we'll have one that doesn't have an animal. The Boy Who Cried Wolf is an example of a fable. But the boy is a boy and not necessarily an animal. But there's a wolf. Technically, there's a fake wolf. But that would still be an example where most of them are going to have lions and mice and raccoons and dolphins and stuff like that. Oh my. But usually animals will be your main characters. Number 3, if we want kids to pay attention to our story all the way through to the end, how long should our story be?
Short.
Yes. Mr. Brovicast, you're already going too long. And so it should be short because we want kids to learn not to hit each other in the head with the rocks. And you can't say, hey, listen to this story I'm going to tell you to make you a better person. Okay, hope you have 4 hours because it's a long. They're like, no. And so you want to be able. Kids are like gnats with caffeine as far as their attention span goes. And so you got to be able to hit them really quick with the information. If not, like, blink, distracted. And so you get to jump right to the information.
You're like a
4.
squirrel.
If you want kids to learn from your story, or actually anytime you want kids to learn in general, you should try and make your story or your information not boring, preferably slightly humorous, because if you can make them a little bit on the funny side, kids are going to be more likely to learn. So whenever you do fables, now they're not going to be like knock-knock jokes. The raccoon walked up to the owl and said, knock-knock, who's there? Ha-ha, you're an owl. It's not like that kind of funny. You're just aiming more for, try not to make them depressing. One day there was a gopher, and he had a disease. Every day he coughed up a lung. And you're like, well, that's depressing. So you're trying to avoid stuff like that. Well, maybe for you guys, you find the disease hilarious. But usually those are the things we try to avoid. But we all have our own issues, I know. Debilitating diseases are the worst.
I can't laugh.
And then 5, the last one that we're going to add into it, it is the age that fables are aimed at. Over the years, we have discovered that you're never too old to be stupid. I'm sure you've probably seen YouTube videos. People going, hey, Bob, watch this. And then all of a sudden, like, arms go flying. So you're never too old to learn that you should not be stupid. So fables should be aimed at people of all ages, because you're never too old to learn that you should not hit your friends in the head with a rock. So as we go through, and this is getting ready to disappear in a moment, because we'll
Wait,
go
I
on to
can't
the
see
next
the other
page.
words.
Square. So as we try to figure out sometimes if a story is going to be a fable or not, it has to follow all along these things. So if you get to Goldilocks and the 3 Bears,
I wouldn't fall
after you
asleep.
go through there, just have a moral, animals, brief, short, stuff like that. If not, then it's probably not going to be a fable. It's just oftentimes it'll be a nursery rhyme or a fairy tale or something like that. All right. And turns out there's a person who became famous for telling fables. The most famous fable teller ever. Actually, they're technically called fabulists, because if you're someone who tells fables. Almost any time you buy a book of fables or see a book of fables, it's going to have this dude's name on it. Although you might not have realized it was even a person's name. It might have just been like, that's a weird collection of letters. Do you guys know who the famous fabulous person is?
I know, but I don't know.
Yes, dear.
ASAP. I mean, not ASAP.
It's not
I don't know. It's, I just had it. I forgot it.
You were correct. Aesop.
Yeah.
A-E-S-O-P is the guy's name. Aesop. Mr. Brovicast, that's a weird name. True. And he did not have a last name either. It was just Aesop. Sort of like Beyonce or Pitbull. And so it was just that one name. The reason being, Aesop was originally from Africa, way back in the day. Grew up in Africa, in a little village, and he died just a couple years ago. It was on the news, you might have seen it. It lived from 620 to 560 BC. It was a big thing. The president was there.
It was?
Wow. It was a really important event. It was on YouTube. You can still find it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. They had cameras back then. And so he died just a couple years ago. I was there. It was sad.
You watched him die?
I did. Yeah, I was right there. We high-fived each other.
Are you a
It was hugging.
vampire?
Something like that. And he was a slave from Africa. He was from Africa, hanging out in the villages and all that, when one day a bunch of Greeks showed up. And the Greeks sort of ran through his village, attacking everyone. And the Greeks took slaves, but their slaves were not race-based. Their slaves were anytime they conquered a village, whether it be anyone from anywhere, they gave you the option. You could either come back and be a slave and work for us, or we could kill you. And they're like, we're pretty open. Either option, you're free to choose. And Aesop was like, I'm going to choose the one that has me not dying. And they're like, come on back. The good thing, well, if there's ever a good thing, about being a slave with Greece is that you could earn your freedom, because it wasn't based on hatred. It was just like, hey, we killed your village, and so you come back to work for us. And once you prove that you're a normal member of society, you earned your freedom. And so Aesop chose to come back and be a slave in Greece, learned how to speak the language, stuff like that. As a kid, Aesop paid attention to all the stories that were told throughout the village. Whenever kids went around hitting each other in the head with rocks, and the old people would tell the stories, he'd pay attention to them. Whenever the kids would go around jumping off of cliffs, and he would like listen to the stories, so he collected all of these stories. One day, in Greece, he's working in the little Greek house where he was a slave, and he sees the kids in the house running around doing stupid kid stuff, hitting each other in the head with rocks. And he's like, listen, why are you guys doing that? And they're like, thwack, because it's fun. He's like, haven't you ever heard the story of the squirrel and the rhinoceros? And they're like, thwack, no. He's like, well, sit down, let me tell you a story. And he tells the kids the story about the squirrel and the rhinoceros, and how the squirrel picked up the rocks and hit his friends in the head, stuff like that. And the kids were fascinated by this story. They loved it. Turns out he was a great storyteller. And the kids were so fascinated, they had, you have to tell us other stories. And he told them other stories from it. Well, the kids went around and told their friends, because they'd go out in the village and they'd see their friends going around and hitting each other in the head with rocks, playing the classic game, Four-Head Rock. And like, oh, it's a great game. They're like, you shouldn't play Four-Head Rock. And their friends are like, why not? Like, haven't you heard the story of the squirrel and the rhinoceros? And their friends are like, thwack, no. Like, well, you got to come hear this old guy talk. And so the friends would come back and listen to Aesop tell the stories. And he did so well with this that eventually it got all the way up to the emperor himself. And the emperor's grandkids one day were out there with the emperor, and they're like, Grandpappy Emperor, what are you doing? And Grandpappy Emperor was taking a rock and going over to Emperor's friends, like, thwack. He's like, I'm playing Four-Head Rock. And the kid's like, haven't you heard the story of the squirrel and the rhinoceros? And the Emperor's like, thwack, no. They're like, well, you got to come hear this old guy talk. And so then eventually he went to go listen to it, and the emperor was impressed. And the emperor said, all right, I'm going to bring you back so that you can work just for me. And you're going to become like the palace storyteller. And he was awesome at this. So much so that whenever people visiting from other countries would show up, he would have Aesop tell them stories. And they would hang out and listen to Aesop tell all these stories, and he'd pass them along. And things went wonderfully for the longest time. And Aesop became quite famous throughout Greece, for his storytelling. So much so that even as a slave, he was able to get the one thing that all slaves want.
Freedom.
And that is?
Freedom.
Nope, it was a new car.
What?
Sorry, he was freed. Eventually, he was freed and was able to earn his freedom. Once he earned his freedom, he stayed in Greece and basically became rich and earned lots of money, because this was 5 years before YouTube was invented. And so because of that, if you wanted to be entertained, you'd have to actually go and listen to people talk. And so, yeah, it came out just a couple years after that. And so he would have to go and listen to him tell these stories, and people would pay him money. He became rich and famous and was all kinds of happy, and things were wonderful. So much so that when people passed throughout Greece, they would often come up and talk to him like, hey, have you heard the story of the raccoon and the angry dolphin? And he's like, no. And they'd tell him the story, and he'd memorize it, and then he'd reuse that story. Problem is, there's a name for that.
Copyright.
Close.
Plagiarism.
Plagiarism.
Same thing.
Essentially, Aesop was famous for being a plagiarist, which is what that big
Oh,
thing
so
says right
Did
there.
you write all that?
I have no idea. So many words.
Can we just write plagiarism?
Wow, only I can keep talking. And so essentially, he was known as a plagiarist. All these stories that he was famous for telling, he stole from other people. So as long as you understand the idea that he was a plagiarist and stole all these, he was not some genius who coming up with fables. He was just a genius being able to take other people's ideas and retell them as stories from his own.
To make money.
And make tons of just gold coins just everywhere. And so he was retelling all these stories from Africa, India, Far East. Anytime someone showed up with a story, they'd trade stories and tell him one, and he'd memorize it, sort of add to his collection. Things went wonderfully. One day, Greece gets into this gigantic war with a neighboring country. And during this war, Greece has people from all throughout Greece send warriors to come help them out. One particular town has the fiercest warriors, and they help turn the tide of the war. These people are from a place called Delphi. And these Delphinians were the best warriors the emperor had ever seen. And all these great recommendations came down about how we would not have won if it wasn't for them. So the emperor goes, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I would like to thank the people of Delphi for sending these incredible warriors to come help us. So he's like, I'm going to do two things, the best things I can think of. One, I'm going to send a bag of gold to the city of Delphi, and I'm going to have 5 pieces of gold given to every person in that village. And I think that'd be great for them. It's a big reward, make everyone happy. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send Aesop there to go and distribute all the gold. And Aesop will show up, he'll hand out all the gold to everyone, he'll stick around and tell stories, there'll be all kinds of excitement, there'll be hugging and high fives, everything will be wonderful. So he goes and tells Aesop, and Aesop was like, yep, sounds cool, boss, I'm on it. They give him this giant bag of gold, puts it in the back of his wagon, heads out to Delphi.
Santa.
Shows up to Delphi. When he gets to Delphi, he's like, hey, I'm here because you guys had the best warriors, you helped us turn the tide of this war, you guys are awesome. I'm going to give you guys a whole bunch of gold, hang out and tell stories. They're like, yay, this is so awesome. He goes, all right, I'm going to be on this little stage. I need you guys to form a line. I'm going to give you guys 5 gold pieces each. Before he can start, the warriors stand up and they go, hey, can we talk before you begin? He's like, yeah, you guys have earned the right. You guys did a wonderful job. I think we'd like to stand up. And so the warriors come up onto the stage. And they go, we appreciate you coming here and handing out all of this gold, but we have one small problem. And Aesop's like, what could the problem possibly be? And they go, here's the issue. We went out and did all of the fighting, with the stabbing and the dying and the bleeding, and because of that, we think it's only right that we get more of the gold. We should get 6 pieces of gold, and everyone else should get 4 pieces of gold, because we're the ones that actually risked our lives. I mean, look at Bob over here. Bob only has 1 leg, and so because of that, I think it's only fair that we get more because we had to do all the stuff to actually earn it. And Aesop's like, oh, that's a good point. And the warriors go, thank you, thank you. And the women go, can we talk? And he's like, sure. So the warriors go off, and all the women come up on the stage. Women go, here's the issue. While you guys were off fighting in the war and doing your stabby fun stuff, we had to stay back and take care of all of the kids who are yelling and running around and screaming, and everyone knows no one likes kids, so we definitely deserve a lot more money for that. So we think it's only fair that all the women get 7 pieces of gold, and everyone else gets 3 pieces of gold, because we actually earn it for taking care of the household, plus Bob was born with 1 leg, so it doesn't count anyway. And they're like, oh, they all start yelling back and forth. And the farmers raise their hands. The farmers go, can we talk? He's like, sure, come on up. So the women go off and the farmers come up. The farmers go, hey, great idea, except here's the issue. We had to give up all of our crops to feed you while you were out there fighting, and to feed all the screaming kids who belong to you anyway. So we had to give up all of our stuff and not make any money on it. So the farmers actually probably get 8 pieces of gold, and the rest of you should get 2 pieces of gold, because that's the only thing that really makes sense here. And so all the 3 groups start yelling and fighting back and forth. And no one can come up with an agreement. And Aesop was like, listen, you all did something. How about we just agree you each get 5 pieces of gold? And they're like, no, who's better? You decide. He's like, fine. How about this? Let me show you something to let you realize why working together is the best thing. And they go, okay, teach us. He's like, all right. He's like, follow me. He picks up the bag of gold. And he puts it down in this little wagon. He takes the little wagon, and they all follow him. And he goes all the way down until he gets out to this lake that's out near Delphi. And he goes, now, watch what happens. And they go, okay. And he picks up the bag of gold, goes over this little rowboat, and drops into the rowboat. And they go, you want us to get in the rowboat? And he's like, no, it's not big enough. I go, okay. And he goes, and he sits in the rowboat, and he starts paddling. Until he gets out in the middle of this big lake. And he stands up with his little cane. He's like, can you guys hear me? And they're like, we can hear you. He's like, all right. He's like, you guys worked together, and you sent out this great army of people who helped turn the tide of this war, helped us win. Because of that, you guys are going to earn 5 gold pieces each. Like, yay, gold pieces. But I get here, and you guys all fight each other, and no one can agree on it. And because you're all fighting and not working together, now I have no way to give you each the gold. They're like, well, who's better? And he goes like, well, watch. And he picks up the bag of gold. And he goes like, ugh. And he's like, do you see the bag of gold? And they go, bag of gold. He goes, do you see the lake? And they go, we see it. No. And he goes, uh-huh. And he throws the bag of gold into the lake. Because bloop, down it goes. They're like, ah. He goes, just wait. They go, okay. And he sits back down and paddles back. Gets out, walks up to the people, and goes, listen, if you'd all work together, you would each have 5 pieces of gold right now. But because you chose to fight each other and not work as a team, now you have nothing. Do you understand how working together solves the problem? And the people all look at each other and they go, working together! And they did. They worked together to kill him.
Oh.
And that's how Aesop died. The entire city-state of Delphi worked together to tear him to pieces and killed him on the spot by an angry mob.
Sounds fun.
And that was the death of Aesop.
I thought he died a couple of years ago.
He did. It's a couple years ago. He lived a nice long life until he got killed by an angry mob.
That's
This is
funny.
the best. That's the way every teacher wants to go out, being torn apart
That's
by an angry
God.
mob. Yeah. Like squaddles. So, Aesop is now no longer with us, and he was killed by the Delphinians, which was not a fun thing to do. But Mr. Brovicast, if Aesop, well, and the problem with Aesop was that he was illiterate. He never wrote down any of these different fables. They were just all in his head. So once he died, all of these fables died with him, and we never had them again. Mr. Brovicast, that's full of lies. You're correct. We still have these things today. How is it we can have these fables today if he never wrote them down and he done died? Decawdon?
Other people have heard them, so they went off telling
And
them.
that's where we introduced this magical thing called oral tradition. I know, just give up now. Oral tradition. We know what tradition is because we've used that word before. Tradition is when what happens? Maggie,
After you
go to the next page.
The next homework page?
Yeah, yeah. Remember what tradition is from way back when we did the that one story lottery? We talked about traditions. You guys had bell work on it. Stretchy.
It's like something that you do like again and again.
Nice one. Something that happens again and again and again. You guys know what oral means?
Through mouth.
Nice one. And so through the mouth. So oral tradition is where you do something over and over, like talking all the time. Yep, like talking all the time. An oral tradition is where a story gets passed down. Oftentimes, you guys will have oral traditions in your family. Whenever you probably got together over Christmas or Thanksgiving, and the family gets together and they always tell stories. Tell that story about Uncle Bob and how he got his hand caught in that rat trap and ran around. And so they'll tell those stories like every year, and they keep doing. And then every year, well, here's the problem with the stories. What happens with these stories as they get passed down from year to year and time to time? Aaliyah?
They get exaggerated.
They get exaggerated, they get changed, and things will never. And that's the same thing that happened with fables. Because different people remember the stories in different ways, all of these fables are different. Even though you hear the tortoise and the hare, there's 100 different versions of tortoise and the hare. Well, which one's the right version? They're all right. Every time Aesop told it, he told it slightly differently. So every time someone else heard it, they would hear a slightly different version. And when they retold it, they told a slightly different version. And so all of these stories change. So oftentimes with these fables, we're going to have multiple versions of them out there, and it's all good. That's the joy of fables. It can't be wrong. One of the other issues with fables is, how long are they?
A paragraph, 2 paragraphs.
Works for me. Short. Because they're short, we don't have time for this thing called exposition. What's exposition?
The boring beginnings.
The boring beginning stuff. And so because we don't have time for exposition, we have to bring in this thing called a motif. Because we don't have time, if there's only a 2-paragraph story, we don't have time to give you background information on who the characters are. So a motif is when you have the same character pop up in multiple stories. Same character pop up in multiple stories. You mean?
Can you go back to the last slide?
Which one are you missing on there?
Oral tradition.
There you go. And so the motif is when you have the same character pop up in multiple stories. Like Harry Potter and all of those ones? No, not like Harry Potter and all of those. The idea that you're going to have... As an example, let's take a look at fairy tales. Fairy tales use motifs. Whenever you're reading a fairy tale and a stepmother comes in, what do we automatically know about that stepmother? She's mean and evil. Every stepmother is mean and evil in every fairy tale. That's a motif, where it's something you automatically know. If we're reading a fairy tale and we have a prince, what do we know about the prince?
He's going to end up with a princess.
There you go. Charming, handsome, going to end up with a princess, always a good guy. That's a motif. Same thing is going to happen with fables, with our animals. As soon as you see an animal, you automatically know what kind of character it is, even though you maybe have never read this fable before. As an example, if I were to put an owl into our fable, before you even read the fable, you know what kind of character that owl is going to be. Because owls are always,
Wise.
there you go. Owls are always wise, smart, intelligent. Are owls actually wise? No, owls are actually pretty stupid as far as animals go. But that's the way the motif works out. Just like not every stepmother is mean. Just, 9 out of 9. math joke. Yeah, I know. It's okay. Back to your nap. Yeah.
What about the prince in Frozen? He's not good. He tried to kill her.
Yeah, you should kill Anna.
Maybe that was good for him.
But that's not good. That's
It's
not
good
nice.
for some people that
Well, I
hate
mean,
that's
it's
not
really-
good.
That's also because that's not a fairy tale. That's a Disney movie.
But that's so is Cinderella not.
Yeah, not always. The original one was, and the one that this one's that Frozen's based on is different because they take it and then Disney changes things. That's a whole different argument.
What
Like
is-
being a bully, mean, or tough animal. As soon as you know there's an animal that's going to be a bully, or going to be mean, or going to be the big tough one, what kind of animal are you going to expect?
Tiger.
A bear.
Tiger and a bear. Fox actually plays a slightly different role.
A
lion.
lion.
By the way, bully comes from the name of an animal,
Bull.
bull. And then if, let's say we have a bunch of mice,
Meese.
what would
Cat.
be? There you go.
I love
And so
cats.
oftentimes a cat will be a bully, the bull,
Like Tom
the
and
bear,
Jerry.
stuff like that. And Tom and Jerry goes right back to that same idea. Those are all examples. Because soon you're going to get to have the joy of writing your own fable, and you have to follow these motifs. So you have the that's why we're going through. Yeah, I know, learning is the worst thing ever. If we're going to have a character that's going to be a sneaky, thief, or tricky,
Snake.
Fox.
snake can be sometimes. Fox also.
Raccoon.
Raccoon has a little
Isaac.
built-in mask.
Now. A lizard.
Lizard, not so much. Those are definitely strange, but not
A
quite the
gecko.
same. Let's see. If for some reason in fables they're going to use weasels a lot because they were really popular over in Europe in that area, and so weasels run around. So weasels will show up often, but the fox is the big one, and then raccoons with the little built-in mask thing.
Huh, that's funny.
And I think Haley, that top notebook right there is Noelle's. Probably has her name on it. You can hand that to her. Noelle, we have a gift for you. And by the way, welcome back. There's an animal known for having a good memory.
Elephant.
Nicely done.
A dolphin.
The elephant does not actually have a super good memory, but it's sort of the motif that goes along with it. So they're known for having a good memory. If as soon as you see a rabbit or a cheetah in the story, you know it's going to there you go. It's going to be the fast or the quick animal.
On yards.
If I want an animal that's going to be slow,
Turtle.
snail,
Tortoise.
turtle. Yeah, see, there's one that hangs from trees.
Sloth.
There you go.
Sloths are pretty.
Turtle, snail, sloth will show up as our slow characters. And then you're probably going to have to go back and just watch class for part of it because there's stories that are in there and we're doing notes that are going to be on there and they'll be on my website and stuff like that, so we'll hook you up. But hey, at least you're here, so welcome. Before you yell out your own name for the dumb one, there's an animal that's oftentimes connected to being a dumb one, which is often in farms. It's a type of farm animal. They're thought to be so dumb
cow.
that you can just push them over and they don't even realize it. And so
Isaac.
they'll play the same one.
Is it okay to look
Only if it's okay if I end up not giving you all your points. No, so much work. Just give up now. I gotta charge that one kid points.
Who?